Welcome everyone. Welcome to the Interledger Community Call. Today we have a couple of updates. I'll begin with the Interledger Foundation. We have a new job opening. You can go to the document to get more details. I'll share the link in the chat. And if you have any questions, you can jump in on the Slack and ask more about the role. Next, the monetization was also got a mentioning in the press. So you can find the link to the article. You can read it through. Yay. We have a few Rafiki updates. You can find it on the document as well. Next, we have Fynbos. Adrian, over to you.
Hey, folks. So updates since last meeting, we had a whole bunch of the ILF crew plus other folks from the web monetization community in Cape Town recently. That was great. We had a work week where we participated in a bunch of the sessions, but also the team have been very focused on getting web monetization fully enabled and the latest versions of Rafiki deployed on our wallet. So that's all in place. I think we got a demo scheduled for later. We've been working closely with Radu and the ILF team on how the browser extension integration will work with the wallets. So that's all progressing nicely. We are making good progress on peering with Chi Money. So hopefully soon your Chi Money payment pointers and Fynbos payment pointers will be interoperable. Bit of work to go there, but yeah, thanks Uchi for being part of that, and we're making some good progress with our MSP partner and with Chi Money on that. And then finally, yeah, we're making some progress as well with on the compliance side, working with our MSP in the US to open up our wallet to non-US users. So it would still be a USD denominated account that you would get, but they're sort of warming up to the idea of making it available to non-US users with some sort of constraints on the amount of money that people can hold in the wallet and transaction limits. So that's quite exciting. We're been working with Alex and ILF on sort of a prioritized country list and where most of the community are. So yeah, if you would like a Fynbos wallet and are not in the US and are not actively campaigning Alex for where can I get one, do let him or the ILF team know that so they make sure your country is on that list. And I think that's the majority of updates from our side. I think I'll wait till maybe the demos and so on and see if we can help out on answering any questions there as well.
Thank you, Adrian. And our leadership team from Interledger is also meeting this week in Tampa, Florida for the work week. So we'll have more updates on the roadmap for 2024 and the coming years. So we will be hopefully able to share more on the next community call. Next, we have Dr. Mangle from Bowie State University. Dr. Mangle, over to you.
Hey, greetings. Sorry, everyone, if I sound a little bad. I'm fighting a nasty cold. I just want to share out some of the stuff we've been doing at Bowie State University. We've brought on 2 scholars, which are helping us to do research. One of the biggest challenges and I think opportunities for us incorporating with the Interledger community is creating on-ramps and engagement for students. How do we get students to the Interledger community? I think the ILF, the Interledger Foundation, has done a great job of building out infrastructure once people arrive to the community. I think the Slack channel is open for communication. I think the biggest challenge being in higher education and being in an HBCU is getting students to Interledger. And I wish I had a magic formula that is going to like, oh yeah, I got something that's going to work out. But realistically, we've tried a multitude of things over the past year and a half to try and bring students in, retain students, and we've been effective. I think we have like a funnel approach. So I want to be clear, like we have 2 scholars who've both attended the summit, but we're driving students in, but I think we have to start with more students. So what does that look like? So I don't want to foreshadow or give away big details, but stuff we're doing now beyond the scholars is what's pertinent to you, and I'll get to it second, is restarting the micro-internships. Those get students who are aware into the community, and I appreciate Adam from GFAM Live for providing opportunities and inlets. I want to be clear, like that's just one person, and here's my dream. If I could just ask for like, how could a student help? Like, and what does that mean? Like, if you have a product, like just asking students, could you give feedback on this? Or even like, could you explore this? What's your take on this? Like simple opinions, but a way to allow students to come in, explore, provide feedback, and sort of get a little mentorship and ask a few questions. Micro-internships are very small. They're the equivalent of like 18 hours worth of work over a 15-week span, but realistically it's 6 weeks. Last time there've been larger projects, but I'm like, if we could just even just pair students up with an Interledger community member, that would be great, a great start. I don't think I wouldn't expect much for students to deliver, but I think it's that piece of like, how do we get students in, allow them to explore, give them a sort of a micro challenge instead of a micro internship. Like we can play with phrasing a little bit, but just sort of ushering them in. Here's a challenge we're dealing with. And it makes that sort of like 2-dimensional aspect of reading a website, joining Slacks, and makes it 3-dimensional when we create a person and connect a person to it. What I'm trying to do at Bowie State University, and I'll replug micro-internships again, is we'll be doing an introduction to Interledger. That's something I'm like more awareness through, it's just awareness pushing things out. We've hired one of our student scholars is community engagement. So trying to connect with students, trying to push more on social media, but trying to continue the dialogue. So again, making students aware. But again, the research component is how do we get more students aware of these opportunities? And I think it's a good research question for students because they'll have access to students. They'll be able to ask questions. We'll be able to implement. So we're going to be doing 2 workshops. We're going to do an introduction to Interledger later this month. I think it's the 29th though. So 2 Thursdays from now. We're going to do a Rafiki workshop that's based upon sort of that's already been set up with Rafiki where people can create a demo account. But we can sort of do a like extend the first intro to Interledger as well as show them how the transactions are done. There's also a course being developed behind the scenes. Like I don't want to steal anybody else's thunder, but I just want to give praise for the work that's being done to, again, once we get students or any individual, I want to be clear, like I'm speaking from a student perspective, but realistically, if you can get students to join the Interledger community, I think you can get anyone. It's like, how do you connect? How do you spread the idea? How do you answer questions? What are the funnels they would go into? So like, what is their value proposition or what job are they interested in Interledger and how it could solve? The other big thing, like, I'm going to do a little, this is the community call. I know it's being recorded, but I'm going to give a little, we have an event planning that we're trying to coordinate with another HBCU. As soon as it gets confirmed, and I think we also have 2 partners that might come on as well to facilitate it, to try and create this event with students who can do some sort of travel and sort of a hackathon. I'll share more later, but I just want to like drop that little nugget. I think that's a lead or a teaser. Yes, call that a teaser. But going back to micro-internships, like I am here to say, I need your help from community members connecting with students. I know I pushed it for like jobs, and I know it's very challenging for large companies, but maybe even just sort of a workshop or a light workshop or a connect with a student, or allow them to see on the other side of Slack, or the other side of this community call, how some things are being done. Micro project would be ideal, or maybe a micro challenge or another set of eyes. But just how would you, if someone expressed interest that they want to help, is there a way they could help you? And that's the way I phrased it. Like it's going to be a reciprocal agreement where you're helping them, but you're going to get a lot out of it. But basically contributing to at least participation. So like now they'll be paired up with someone. So like they're aware, there's a challenge. I really don't think that these aren't students that are going to be able to do full-time jobs, but if there's just something you could use a set of eyes on or just connect with a student, I think that's going to be really beneficial. So thank you. If there's any questions, I don't know if this format's appropriate, but if there's any questions, like I'm available. I could post my email in the chat, but realistically on Slack, it's just Andrew Mangle. I think I'm at I think I'm at a Mangle. And I can post myself there too. I gave a thumbs up to the community call. So if you want to see my name, I'm on the community call with a thumbs up as well. So thank you for the invitation, Vanille. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Dr. Mangle. Yeah, if anyone have any questions, please feel free to jump in. Going once.
Andrew, do you know what sorts of things your students are interested in as far as types of people to pair up with?
So it's been interesting because I started this time with the past. We have a sort of roster, like a running Excel sheet. So like I think Jalaire may have reached out. There might have been a community post on community.interledger, and it was asking. So we keep a log of it. Why I'm doing the events is what they were interested in was not what I was hoping for. Because what I want students interested in specific opportunities. So Colt did something last year with a UI UX. I've had about 7 interested students. So those that I've sent out like 30, and then 7 are like, okay, sign me up for something. And then they've been related to project management assistance. That's why I sort of changed the discussion today away from like a specific task to collaboration. Because when someone says like project management assistant, in my mind, I interpret, so this is my projection, my interpretation is they want to help, but they don't know where to help, and they'd like to be a part of something. So project management assistant is like, they just want to help out, or they're willing to help out. It isn't like Fynbos was on here, like cross-border payments, like or even web monetization, which I would have picked up before with my class. I open this up to everyone. They seem to just want to help. Like they are willing to help. They're interested in exploring. That's why I said like, so answering your question, I don't think there's a specific task they want to achieve, except there is one person that has a specific interest. But otherwise, they've consistently referenced 6 out of those 7 was project management assistant, which is something we had. But realistically, I think there's a better way to approach that.
Thank you, Dr. Mangle.
Thank you.
Next, we have the deep dive on web monetization. I would like to invite CD. CD, over to you.
Great, thanks, Neil. Please just tell me if you can hear and see my my shared screen, and if you can hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm going to connect some power here so that we don't have a blackout in like a minute or two. Thanks, Vanille. I'm really keen to just share a little bit of, I think Adrian mentioned a little bit of this, that in the last week of January, we had a group of about 15 or so, 16 people gathered in Cape Town. So that was from the 29th of Jan to the 2nd of Feb. So the intention was for us to have a 5-day opportunity to firstly meet and I think align on what our vision, our understanding, our strategy is for web monetization as a product that we, the web monetization community, part of the Interledger community, are working on. And then to start carving out some very product-specific understanding, and then moving, I guess, lower and lower into detail, right? Detail around goals, detail around implementation specifics, detail around how to engage a wider community, detail around how to pitch from a marketing / go-to-market point of view. So yeah, I'm keen to show you a little bit of what we covered. I think what I'll do though is just share some highlights from each day, and then kind of show you a snapshot of the outcomes. So by the end of the week, where were we in terms of defining the roadmap, in terms of building a little bit of what, something that you can actually have a look at. What I have also right at the end, Adrian gave us a little breadcrumb for that as well, a bit of a sneak peek of web monetization in action with a Fynbos wallet in the background. So going to dive in.
I don't want to interrupt you, but you said something about sharing a screen in the beginning. Are we supposed to see a shared screen already? Because I don't see one. Maybe it's just me.
Thank you, Savina. I will start again. All I'll do is start with resharing. So Thank you for saying something. I would have spent the next
I
10
didn't
minutes
even
saying,
see the loading screen that you usually see with Google Meet. Just never happened for me.
I would spend the next 10 minutes saying, as you can see, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Is that any better?
Still no screen
We
for me.
don't see a screen, Sally.
Oh, wait,
Yeah,
wait, it's
now
coming.
it's starting. Yeah.
Yes.
Cool. All right. So nothing to report here. We're just reflecting a little bit on the week. Starting with an overview. We were here for 5 days. The thinking was that on the first day, we just align or gather on understanding around what web monetization is, what our understanding or shared understanding of the different actors are and the personas, if you will. We wanted to also start using the same language, if you will, for things, so that we're talking about, or we're sharing understanding and communicating in a way that's a little bit, maybe a little bit more effective. Plenty of work has been done by plenty of really experienced people, right, that are quite mature in this space, whether it was in the previous iteration of COIL or prior to the actual work week. So by no means were we thinking that we are kind of coming up with things for the first time. We were certainly drawing from, let's say, knowledge and wisdom that resides very much in the minds of those that were in the room and some of those that were outside of the room across the continent or so, joining us from Romania. Okay, so day one, I would say what the point there was to align understanding, and I'll go into some highlights of some highlights for each day. On the second day, we started to dive into the strategy of web monetization, or talking about goals. And then we did a really, really cool exercise on reimagining what monetization could be, right? We've seen it in one, if you will, in one iteration in the COIL sense. And it kind of carved how we enter some of our conversations. And what was really interesting was to think and talk about it a little bit differently. Okay. On day 3, we split into groups. One dealt with like thinking and talking about product strategy. The other group dealt with the implementation detail as we head towards these targets that we have of having something that we're able to share either in alpha or beta mode in this quarter 1 of 2024. All right, so I'll touch on day 4 and day 5 as I continue. Okay, cool. So day 1, like I said, the point was to gather on understanding, or to align on understanding, to have our different sort of voices be able to articulate, like what do we say web monetization is? What do we see as the life cycle of web monetization payments or tipping in the context of web monetization? There were some interesting conversations about thinking or separating how we see once-off payment, meaning a tip, as an example, from payments that we typically think of as web monetization. So pay as you browse, kind of streaming payments on an ongoing basis. We started to also put together a shared view of the flow of initially setting up a user, initially setting up their web monetization extension. We then dove into the actors that are involved in WM or WebMo interactions. And you'll see that on the right-hand side here. I've started to articulate some of what we came out with. It might be super obvious or like well-known to some of us in the audience. I just found it really helpful for all of us to kind of question and like grapple with the point of view that this actor is kind of operating on behalf of or as. And then finally, towards the end of the day, Jeremiah took us through a really interesting exercise of thinking about the business case or the value proposition that web monetization presents. Okay, so very quickly, what I will share with you from day 1. First of all, I think I'll do it post this conversation, but I'll add some links to, for example, this business case model that we looked at to the meeting notes, right? So you can always have a look at it later, as well as to the slide deck. Right, so we said in the context or in the world of thinking about web monetization, you can think of a user, provider of web monetization, a user agent, and then a wallet. Perhaps there are other personas or actors. I just want to call these sort of the main ones that we dove into on that day, where we say the user is a person specifically, and they want to pay, or they're keen to pay, right? By visiting websites and seeing whether they're interested or not. And then we spoke about the fact that they're also providers, or in this instance, the web monetization providers, a piece of software with a user interface. And the point is that the user, so web monetization user, is able to represent their desires. So how much do I want to make available potentially for paying? Who do I potentially want to pay or not pay? And what's the rate at which I want to pay, etc. So the provider is the user interface at which the user, web monetization user, represents all of these wishes and what they would like to see happen. An agent, on the other hand, is still software, but without a user, without an interface that faces the user in particular. And the point there is that the agent conducts, I guess I think of it as something like a conductor of like a symphonic orchestra. They conduct what happens in terms of payments that will flow to the receiving wallet based on instructions from the provider. So the agent really isn't interacting with the user or looking up what instructions from the user in real time. The agent hears from the provider and the provider alone. And of course, we just said that the user, the provider represents the desires of the user. So I'm just saying from a communication point of view, the agent says, hey, provider, like what did the user say? Whenever the last time was that the user updated or sent you their config or their wishes, right? And then there's the wallet, which is an open payments digital wallet or account, and might be issued. We require that it has an address, and it would be issued by either a licensed account service entity, or account servicing entity, or a web monetization provider. So presumably, you as a user are either able to get a wallet from an account servicing entity, for example, Fynbos wallet or a GitHub wallet. That would be sort of where our world begins, I would say. Or you are in a region in the world, a geographic region where GitHub or Fynbos do not make it possible for you to open an account. And so there might be a web monetization service provider that makes it possible for you to sign up for a service with them, and thereby being able to use their wallet, and then they would disperse or distribute funds that you have to you, or funds that you would like to send from you. So these are sort of the main actors that we spend quite a bit of time like making sure that we understand and are saying, kind of thinking and saying the same thing in the room as we talk about them. Okay, I can waffle a little bit, so I'm going to invite you to raise a hand or ask a question if you'd like. Otherwise, I'm just going to continue with the deck. I'm also going to speed it up a little bit. So on day 2, we dove into thinking and talking a little bit more about strategy and goals. And then we had the exercise that I mentioned where we reimagined how we could approach implementing web monetization. You'll see that I've said the strategy is loading here. I guess on the one hand, it's very useful for it to be clear and succinct, but also like agreed across the board. So I've chosen not to articulate it as I see it for now, because I know that there can be debate on that. So let's call it loading. But the goals that we did, or the goal that we, sort of audacious goal that we landed on, was the idea of 1 million users, 1 million web monetization users or visitors, right, consumers of content, and then 1,000 monetized websites. This could be platforms, this could be independent websites, etc. And of course, it's usually helpful when you're setting a goal to kind of indicate a time frame. We're well aware of that, and that's why I'm saying that this is sort of a strategy and goal articulation that is still cooking. But we could at least agree on this as a baseline or starting point. We also then spoke about who the audience then could be for, right? For who our target audience would be for what we're building. And so the thinking was that platforms or publishers that already have large user base or a large user base are then able to be the distribution or sort of the channels of outreach, if you will, so that we quote unquote, the community is not trying to reach individual users as sort of the main strategy, but rather platforms and publishers that themselves have a lot of participants, a lot of followers, a large user base. These could be dev platforms, these could be social media platforms, education platforms. We threw some names out there that would be specific ones that we think we can target based on having connections or the ability to revive a conversation, etc. But I think I'll leave it at this sort of higher level to begin with, and we can go into detail if you'd like. And then we had a really fascinating session led by Jeremiah. I'm not sure if you're on the call, Jay, but the idea of reimagining web monetization, so away from how we have traditionally thought of it, where it is almost pay as you browse, right? Or the idea being pay as you browse on this sort of ongoing basis where you quote unquote stream payments to the website that is visited, the monetized website that's visited. Looking at it differently and saying, what if I said every day, and we'll just start with the day for example's sake, I have $5 and I'm going to visit different websites. Some of them will be web monetized, and some of them won't be. And by the end of the day, there'll be a sort of tally of what my attention was. And it'll be possible to say, I spent 10 hours online, half of that time was on web monetized sites, and this is the proportion of time I spent on each one. And then apportioning the payment that you make at the end of the day to each of those web monetized sites based on the attention or sort of making a post payment at the end of the day, or at the end of the period to them based on the attention that you gave to each monetized website each day. So that was really interesting. It turned our whole sort of approach or thinking about how and when a payment is initiated or not initiated, some of the shortcomings of paying as you earn. I think one of the main drivers there that we spoke about was was the payment at a rate of 60 cents per minute, 36 cents per minute, right? In the old coil model, I think I'm okay to make that reference, which then works out to a very small proportion of a cent per second, right? Which just meant that from a revenue stream point of view, it was really, really difficult for creators or for publishers to see web monetization as a viable revenue stream, simply because the rate at which people could get paid was fixed, determined by the service provider, in that web monetization provider, in that instance, Coil, and quite low, right? So some of the reasons we're thinking about reimagining web monetization, or that Jeremiah invited us to think about, was to address some of these shortcomings. Cool. I will.
Can I ask a question there?
Yes, please do.
So my one alarm bells with that would go off would be that requires us getting the user to take an extra step at the end of the day of deciding on that. And that's always been like, it's when people are busy in their lives, will they take that extra step and actually, put in the money at the end of the day would be, I guess, the question to ask there. I also was curious with reimagining web monetization, if we've thought about reimagining the name, given that I know as somebody who's gone out there and been speaking about web monetization, everybody thinks they know what web monetization is, and they think it's advertising, they think it's affiliate marketing and all of those things. And so often when you're talking to groups that would be ideal users for this, like open educational groups, as soon as they hear the word web monetization, they close off and they get their guard up right away.
Interesting.
And so it's always been something I've been speaking about since the early days, where it's been I think one of the blocks we've got there, and I'm wondering if if possibly at this stage of the game, there's an opportunity to reimagine the way we term it. I know one thing that Chris has thrown out in the past has been, terming it browser payments as opposed to web monetization, which works if that's, kind of the long-term goal with it. If it might change, then maybe it's a different word that we're looking for.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Erica. Those are some really interesting points that you bring up. So I think the first thing I'd like to say is this thought exercise of reimagining web monetization was not to say that, and now we are headed in the direction of implementing, but rather say, hey guys, while we're here, kind of for the first time working on making a first post-coil release of this thing that we used to call web monetization, what if we did it differently? And then kind of debating and determining if we're going to do it that way and when and why that would be a good idea or why that wouldn't be a good idea. So very much a thought exercise, right? Not a direction that we are now taking as yet. Okay, so that's on the first point. On the second point about renaming, that's a really cool, that's a really interesting and cool point that you bring up. Firstly, I would love to open it up because I'm not there's not an authority on this. I think maybe it's much more of a community sort of conversation that would be quite interesting. I am also aware, though, that there might be some maybe more process-heavy impacts of renaming it because of the actual specification, even though it's still a draft at this moment with the W3C that we intend to submit as for formal consideration, etc. But good point, and I'm now going to take a pause. I would love to hear from some of the seasoned folks on this point that Erica brings up. So please feel free to come through, Adrian, Sabina, anybody else who would like to talk to Erica on this point.
Interesting that you bring that up, that the term may be a problem. Like, that has never occurred to me. Like, I didn't know that people from different groups were thinking about different things when they heard web monetization. But I, just like CD just said, we may just be just a little bit too late to think about a different term, just because now it is actually getting some attention with the experiments in the browser. So if we rename it now, then maybe we have more confusion than we already have. But
yeah, I'd say the project and the standard at W3C, we probably don't want to mess with.
Is there a way, though? So without touching the way it's named within the standard with W3, is there not a way that we couldn't be utilizing a different name in terms of marketing, in terms of the story out there, in terms of education?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I think that's kind of an ILF call, how they want to brand this project, or how they want to package the product, or so you could call the extension, for example, could be called something else. It could be called the Bing Bong extension, which implements web monetization standard. Yeah, so that's kind of that's I guess just like Rafiki is a brand, right? Rafiki is a brand that's used on a stack of open source software that implements a bunch of standards. Yeah, so I guess that's up to the ILF, I guess, if they want to do that, if they agree with you that it's confusing. I would say on the W3C side, yeah, that ship's probably sailed, unless the nature of what we want to do ends up being very different. Like, then there might be an inflection point there to say, oh, okay, well, version 3 of the standard is actually way different to what we've got now, so maybe we should call it something else. I would say, yeah, probably past the point of no return. Yeah, that's going to just cause more confusion, more harm than good.
Cool. Thanks, guys, and thank you, Erica. Yeah, I'd love to revisit this particular point. That's an interesting point that you made, Adrian, about potentially separating the name of the product from the name of the specification, and maybe leaning into into some of the benefits. Some of the benefits of addressing what Erica's talking about. I also have not heard, other than, I thought that you were going to say, Erica, that it's a tongue twister. I've had to learn how to say web monetization. It's just not, these are very long words that my tongue doesn't easily wrap around. So, okay, let's consider that point an interesting topic to take away and revisit if that's cool. And then I'll just move on to what we covered on day 3. Maybe I'll speed it up a little bit more. Erica, we can also take it into Slack, so please don't feel that I am shutting down the conversation. All righty, so on the 3rd day, we split up into 2 groups, one focused on product strategy, one focused on implementation. And the idea was that we would just have really focused time, on the one hand, defining and then refining some sort of roadmap and articulating it in a way that makes sense for like a to-be version 1 and what comes after version 1, whether it's version 2 or some minor versions prior to that. The product implementation team then dove really into the implementation details. I think what I wanted to highlight here was, on the one hand, we got to a point where it was clear that there needed to be a way for the web monetization extension to exchange signing keys with the receiver's wallet. And once that key exchange or once that handshake is successful, we're then able, or the wallet is then able to trust and at least authenticate messages that it receives from the user agent as valid and as being from a known and valid source or authenticated source. And then there was defining, okay, so one of the reasons I began with kind of articulating what the personas were, so an agent versus a provider versus a user, etc., was because we then dove into some detail about the fact that there needed to be a way that the agent, if you will, interfaces, or defining the interface between the agent and the provider. And that's because the interface, that's because the agent is, on the one hand, requiring comms for the provider to be able to let it know what the user has specified, or for the provider to be able to, if it needed to say, hey, agent, by the way, know this, know that this tip needs to go through, or know that the user now wants to send a one-time payment to this website, that interface is well defined. And then the third level of detail was just defining the workflow or the flow diagram for connecting an agent to the receiving wallet, but then also making web monetization payments. Okay, so I'll move us on to the last 2 days. The implementation group continued to refine the workflows. I will say that actually from day 3, there also was concurrent development happening where the Fynbos team was integrating web monetization integration capabilities, so that we would be able to have a Fynbos wallet. I hope that I'm not now mispronouncing it. Fynbos wallet, yes. Be on the receiving end of payments, or even on the sending end of payments. So basically, for users to be able to be issued a Fynbos account with a wallet address that they can then use either as a website visiting user or as the receiving website. Okay, cool. We then had the group that had previously focused on product strategy move into thinking and talking about, firstly, community engagement. We could also think of it as advocacy, developing and talking through a contribution and developing engagement plan there. So a plan around engaging developers and engaging other kinds of contributors beyond just software developers. We then also formed a group of, the same group, then went on to talk about, if you will, like the marketing/sales perspective. So go to market, where we had a really comprehensive and really helpful analysis of alternatives to this, what we're calling like web monetization, being how Brave, the Brave browser handles rewards, Mash, which is an interesting monetizing alternative, as well as Flatter. Jeremiah took us through some pretty helpful analysis of their messaging, of what their offerings were, and some of the ways in which we can learn from or leverage some of how their offering has matured or changed over time. We then ran through a really helpful pitch deck. In fact, pitch is not the right word, sorry, for this deck. This was more of a web monetization sort of presentation deck or slide deck for conferences, primarily web developer conferences. 2 or 3 of our ambassadors will be in conferences, I think in April and then later on in the year as well. So it felt like a really opportune time for us to look at what the messaging, like the very detailed level of messaging and refining the points of what it is that we want to say about this product, its roadmap, and specifically what will be available or possible by when. And then we also went into a conversation where it was like, there are also opportunities of having just like a 5-minute conversation with a person one-to-one that you could roughly call a sales pitch, but where you're saying, right now I'm talking to potentially a content publisher, and specifically the content publisher is a online newspaper, or this is a platform for funky media, or so defining very specific, like 3 or 4 I will call them personas, where we're saying, what is the pitch that you would present or that you would set forth to them in just 5 minutes about what web monetization is and what it could mean or offer from their point of view, like why this would be a meaningful value proposition to them. Okay, so how it's going, I don't have a lot of time. So what I've done is added a link to the working roadmap. It's not yet in GitHub. It will be in GitHub, let's say, within the next week or 2. And the reason is we started with a Google Doc and kind of add this way of thinking about version 1, its milestones, the point of view that we want to look at, and then kind of defining what outcomes we want and drilling all the way down into the features. And then looking at whether we want like an alpha or beta release, and then moving on into what we were thinking of as version 2, and then renamed to sort of post version 1. So this link will take you to the document as we have it right now. What I want to do before I lose time with you guys, though, is show you a bit of a sneak peek of where we are with connecting the Fynbos wallet to a web monetization agent. So I'm going to stop the slideshow and move over, hoping that you can still see my entire screen. There is no sound. There's no audio on this, so that's on the one hand. And then this, so we've got a team of 3 developers that are based in Bucharest that have been building the web monetization extension that we intend to build, that we intend to release. And this is just a view of what being able to connect the agent of the web monetization extension to a Fynbos wallet looks like today. Sneak peek, we call this sneak peek because the hope is that in the next, well, we feel comfortable that in the next call, we'll be able to do an actual live demo where you're interacting with Radio and thinking and talking and asking questions, etc., to the Fynbos team as well. So here goes. So we're landing on a web monetized page, and I'll hit play. So just to show you that we've got the tag and a payment pointer on the page. There's our extension. Moving into the Fynbos wallet. sending wallet and the receiving wallet. Great. So that is it. So I will close this little viewer and stop sharing and open the mic for conversation, for questions. Invite Radu and Adrian to talk to us, please, if there's anything else that you feel like we should expand on.
So just to explain what was happening there. So the person basically put $5 in, I guess, as the maximum, and then the time they spent on that Radu site, it did not end up being 32 cents. Is that kind of what was going on?
Yes. Radu, please go ahead.
Yes. So the amount that was put in that in the extension field represents the amount that the grant can use. So basically, the grant that we ask from the extension from a Fynbos wallet, we'll be able to only spend $5 from that wallet. When the grant spends that $5, we will not be able to spend more. So the user will have to make the interaction step again, so it can provide more money to the extension. But what will be in V1, we will have monthly recurring payments where we can say that, okay, we can have $5 a month without the user having to make the interaction step again.
That's awesome. Thank you. So the $5 was the maximum for the month or for a period. That's awesome. That's great.
Yes.
So I guess if there was multiple websites, then that $5 would be shared across all those different websites over that period.
Yes.
That's super good. Thanks, Radu.
Yeah. So that's right. Just to add on sharing, different browsers though basically will have different, in version 1 at least, we're not going to be able to share the budget across different devices or browsers. So each browser, right? So if it's $5 on my mobile and something else, or the same thing on my laptop, those will be drawn down from separately, at least in version 1. Cool. Anything else?
Siri, could you share the link to the document on the slides?
I sure can. Thank you. Cool. If there are no more questions, then that's it from us. So thank you. And then massive thanks to everybody who was at the work week and everybody who wasn't at the work week. It's been super cool to learn from and collab and like ask questions, etc. from through and with each one of you. So thanks, and it's back to you, Vanilla.
Thank you, Siri. And thank you, everyone. That's it for today. So we have recorded the call, so we'll also be sharing the recordings later on this week. So see you all next month. Thanks everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.